Hello and welcome to The Human Frequency. It's been a while since we did an episode, a few weeks. We've been very busy making the last changes on the book, preparing it to come out. And so I want to thank you for bearing with us as we finish this thing up. It's been quite monumental, but very much looking forward to this book coming out.
Thank you. And when it's done, you'll see why it took so long, because it's about 5.5 years worth of work, and I had to look through thousands of pictures and lots of written accounts and news stories and all kinds of things that I had collected over the years. So it's finally being designed and laid out for print. So we'll let you know when it's done. Now we're finally back. We finally have time again to do something besides just reading and writing my book forever. And we want to talk a little bit more about 5G, although I must ask the question, why are we still talking about this?
I don't know. It's just one of those things that never seems to go away. I answer the question, then I answer the same question again. And after about the 50th or 60th time answering it, I inevitably wonder the same thing you do. Why are we still talking about this?
Well, I think there's just so much negative programming and fear going around that it doesn't matter how many times I answer the same question. People are still just terrified of this. And I would like to refer everybody to our old episode about 5G, which I think was about 1.5 years ago. We were trying to explain it in a way that would really let you know what you need to do and how to stay safe and not to be afraid. Because most of the people who will tell you how to stay safe and what to do are also very, very afraid, and they don't necessarily know what to do, or the fear wouldn't be there. So we'll talk about it a little bit differently than that. But
yeah, as hard as it may be to believe that there is negative programming in the media around us, it is a reality. So yeah, we're going to hopefully clear some things up, but okay, I'm sure I'll get the same questions that I always get, but we can at least readdress these issues and have them fresh in everyone's minds, right?
Well, yeah, and for everybody out there who has quit smartphone use, that's the most important thing you can do to protect yourself from 5G. The transmitters, we discussed this in the last episode in more detail, so you can listen to that if you want to know more about how it compares with 4G and all those kind of statistics on what kind of energy is being put out there, because it's actually very similar. And the transmitters are short range with 5G, and with 4G, they're long range, but the 5Gs are going to be more pervasive. So you're going to have it closer to home. But the main thing is that you don't bring it in. And that signal out there is a lot different than that signal in your pocket and in your home. So if you've already quit smartphone use, then a lot of that fear should be alleviated, because I know that I've been asked, well, how is this even going to help if I quit using my smartphone? Because it's right outside. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. You'd be surprised at how much better you feel if you don't have it right on you. It is targeting individuals. If you have the energy weapon on you, it is going to keep targeting you. I mean, it's right. Designed for that. It's designed to deplete you, make you miserable, agitated, and sick. And so that somebody really nasty can feed off of you. And is that really worth doing to yourself? But if you've quit, then you don't have that problem. And so if you're still worried about what's outside, that is far less of an individual attack on you. It's farther away. It's lower impact on the body. And you can actually do a lot about that just by having orgonite in your house. And you can also... This is a really, really amazing one, but it's a little more expensive. You can sleep every night in an EMF canopy. You can do all kinds of things to shield yourself and neutralize the energy in your house. If it's outside, it's so much weaker than if it was in your pocket.
Yes, and those canopies do work. They are a bit expensive, but we slept in one for, what was it, about 2 years or so, give or take?
Yeah.
I'm
trying to think about the time frame, because we stopped doing it because I recovered from my problem that was EMF related.
And you have to be diligent. You have to drape the thing over you, and you have to have the mat under you too. You have to have a complete, it's basically you're sleeping in a Faraday cage.
Yeah. On
the bottom and on top and on your sides. But it does work wonders. I can say that for sure.
Well, it did for me, because I had this horrible ringing in my right ear, and it wasn't exactly tinnitus, but it was like a frequency sound. It was like two tones back and forth. I called it the fax machine. And I just put up with this for a long time, and I used all kinds of things to make it better. And I used orgonite. Sometimes I just put orgonite right on my ear, or I would put a tensor ring around my ear, just all kinds of things like that, just to make it a little quieter. But after a long period of time of sleeping under the canopy, my symptoms started to decrease until finally now I don't live with the sound anymore. I don't hear it anymore. There was a period of time where I could tune into it and then tune back out again, but now I choose never to tune into it again, so I don't hear it anymore.
Now, if you've quit smartphones, I'm going to take it even a step further than you did, Sharon. First things first, give yourself a big round of applause because I realize that telling people to stop using smartphones is you're asking for very, very few people, if any, to actually listen to you and follow through. So I do want to compliment.
People love smartphones.
I do want to compliment you who have done that, because it's very difficult to do. It's an addiction, and as unpopular as that may be to face and accept, it's the truth, and we have an obligation to disclose the truth.
Yes, it is an addiction. And when you detox, it can actually be very, very difficult. And I've spoken with people who have had symptoms from it, and I've had symptoms from it too.
Yeah. It should be treated like any other addiction, and the detox symptoms are just like any other addiction too.
And you can think of EMF as an energetic substance. So it's substance addiction and it's substance abuse. But a lot of people don't really know that that's the nature of it. So it seems innocuous, and it's portrayed as innocuous. The thing is with the sleeping in the canopy, the reason I brought that up is by removing myself from DOR for a very long time, as the canopy absorbs that, and so there's very little signal inside it, your body starts to detox. And this is something that we learned when we interviewed Lloyd Burrell, it's going on 4 years now, but maybe 3.5 years, as long ago. He explained, and he overcame his symptoms of energetic sensitivity, or EMS. He had horrible symptoms from as soon as the smartphones, or as soon as the cell phones started to be more popular around 2002, he had terrible symptoms. And by removing the EMF from his own home and reducing it in his life that way, he was able to overcome the symptoms permanently. So it was almost like getting some of that toxin out of the body. You can finally recover as long as you don't keep reintroducing it.
Exactly.
So you can actually recover from EMS by doing these things. And that's why I brought it up, is it is wonderful when people actually quit using. And when you have the detox period and you finally can get your symptoms dealt with, you can live again, because you're not going to be reintroducing the toxin.
Lloyd Burrell, by the way, runs the website electricsense.com. And the funny thing about Lloyd, he is the only one that I can recall who actually advocates for complete abstinence from these devices and doesn't promote some Band-Aid to the problem. So I want to point that out, that he's the only one that I know of.
And that's what I really liked about him too. Interestingly, he is not into things like orgonite or tensor rings or any energy tools. He advocates a complete abstinence from the EMF. And he thinks these tools, like you said, are Band-Aids. Now, I wanted to explain that many people treat them as Band-Aids, but what you have to do is just use that once you've quit, or in conjunction with quitting. That's what I think. So I find the energy tools necessary for me, but without quitting using the EMF tools, you're really not going to get the benefits as much as you could. So yeah, I think that's great, because most people who are into energy tools, they say you can keep using the dangerous things, but that the energy tools do all the work for them. But it's really not the case. You'd really need to do both.
And he recognizes also the importance of detoxifying, and an EMF canopy is one way. Another way is grounding. Mm-hmm. And I've used this before to great success. It's a little harder to do when you live in the city, but you can go to a park.
It's free.
Exactly. Costs nothing. So yeah, you can always find a patch of bare earth to stand on barefoot. And it does work, because our bodies are they're holding and retaining these free-floating electrons, and they need to be grounded out. Mm-hmm. That's just one way to do it. Another way is with an Epsom salt bath, which is incredibly relaxing. Even if you don't have any electrons floating around in your body. It's a very good way of relaxing. And I think that's one thing that's sorely missing in this society. Is
relaxation is very
people
important.
do not take the time to just care for themselves, care for nurture themselves. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and somebody recently that I was talking with about this, she introduced a lot of orgonite into her life all at once and had this huge orgone rush in a home that was previously saturated with DOR. And now in this home, the EMF sources were all still there, but the orgone was so much higher than it used to be. So this individual was detoxing pretty much. Even with the toxins still in the house, they were actually feeling the effects of becoming more energetically sensitive. Because Wilhelm Reich found this, and we have found this too, and it totally matches what he found out, is that organisms that are higher charged, with a higher charge bioenergetically, that are healthier and have an expanded OR, and that are happier, they are more energetically sensitive than an organism with a contracted OR, meaning their life force energy is stagnant and they're saturated with deadly energy. And EMF is the most prevalent form of DOR today. So sometimes when you're having the sudden influx of all that orgone energy, you could start to feel symptoms. And that's what was happening, is they were going through the detox. And what ended up happening is just being around anything that was emitting DOR was more than they could handle anymore, when previously they were used to it. So that's what happened, is they became higher charged, healthier. But as a result, the EMF hurt them more. So to answer the question of how come I have an energy tool that's supposed to help me, why do I feel worse bringing it in? It's the detox. You have to turn that stuff off. If you turn it off, then the detox will be a lot smoother.
The stuff is still emitting.
Yeah.
That's what you have to understand.
Yeah.
The orgonite does not block EMF. The emitters are still emitting.
It just makes it easier to live with.
The only thing that can change that is by turning off the emitters. That's it.
Yes.
So I can't stress that enough. It's one of those things where I understand that people want to keep using the devices, but look at us. We have hundreds of orgonites around us, and we still refrain from using the devices because you have to.
So for everybody who's already quit and is afraid to go outside, there's really nothing to fear out there. Open space is great. It doesn't allow nearly as much of the bouncing around of the EMF as indoors. And I've been inside really tight environments with lots of phones, like buses. I used to not be able to take the bus without getting a headache. It was stuff like that. But outdoors, the open air, it doesn't bounce around nearly as much. So if you're afraid of it out there and worry about the transmitters, and you have orgonite with you and you don't carry a device like that anymore, then you really are in good shape. And the other thing you can do is if you're worried about air pollution, and a lot of people still are concerned about chemtrails, and my book will explain a little more about what we really know about them and what we think we know about them. And right now, what we just think we know is that they're dropping pollution on us. I used to think for sure this is happening, but I've seen so much evidence for atmospheric purification and an upward movement of pollution away from the earth with orgonite that if you're even worried about it, I don't think that it's even happening anymore. Everything I've seen across the entire continent is showing me that chemtrails are becoming a thing of the past. And if you see them, they're very likely neutralized, and you just will need to learn what a neutralized chemtrail looks like. And my book explains that too. But likely you're going to be fine out there. And if you're worried, I would just gift your neighborhood, your immediate environment with orgonite, get your local cell towers, and that'll take care of a lot of that positively ionizing energy that is what makes it unpleasant to be out there and polluted. It'll clear it all up and you'll have clean air.
Well, yeah, 6 or 7 years ago, both of us were ardent proponents of the heavy metal hypothesis, but that is at best just hearsay from government actors, and at worst, just a complete hoax. It's not proven.
Well, we have no way to know. And that's what I ultimately realized after years and years of looking at this is I have to say that some of the things that I said in the past, I really didn't know. I was just quoting sources that I took as reputable, and I would say, well, such and such said this, and they work for this company or that government agency. And now I realize, well, that's what they said, but let's look at the proof.
Exactly.
And what we learned is that this warfare is energetic. So when you're worried about what's in the sky, as long as you take care of your own energy field, you're doing everything you need to do. I actually am surprised sometimes at how much healthier I am than people around me. And I don't feel great most of the time because I'm constantly battling DOR, and that's our work. Mm-hmm. And the type of work that we're doing, we're always attacked energetically and by shills and all kinds of crazy things, all kinds of mind control induced attacks. So if I feel like I'm healthier than other people and I'm going through all this, I can only imagine what they're dealing with the DOR emitter in their pocket all the time.
But again, less highly charged organisms are not going to react the same way than those having a higher OR, who are in a more expanded OR state, is what I mean.
So what do you say to somebody who is afraid of 5G and keeps using a device that relies on 5G? And they say it's terrible and I don't want it, and then they're using it. It sounds to me like they do want it and are using it. So what's the problem? If you like it, then why complain about it? It's your will.
That's exactly what I would say. What's the problem? You're using it. That means you support it. That means you like it. If you didn't like it and didn't support it, you wouldn't use it. And there's no argument against this point I'm making. There's no valid argument.
You know what people say, though? They say, well, it's everywhere. There's nothing I can do. I can't escape it. You certainly can. These are all individually targeted. You cannot believe the difference between the effect of a smartphone on your body or in your bag or next to you than one in someone else's hand many feet away. You can't believe the difference.
As a very defeatist mentality. And for someone to say that it won't make a difference because everyone else is using one, the same people probably think that their vote matters.
Well, what if you didn't like smoking and it was the 1950s and everyone around you was smoking and you said, well, I don't like all the cigarette smoke, but what can I do? If you can't beat them, join them, and you're just smoking even though you don't like it. Of course, you just wouldn't smoke. Yes, you'd be putting up with their smoke and you wouldn't like it, but at least you wouldn't be doing it directly to yourself. This is what we're talking about. And this is sort of like the nicotine addiction of the modern day. Everyone's nervous tick. As soon as there's a socially awkward moment or a moment of silence or you can think of something, all of a sudden your brain is operating and you had a thought. You got to squash that real quick.
Out comes the phone. That.
So the phone is coming out right away. So I really don't understand the attitude about not liking 5G but using it. To me that says, well, you like it, so just use it. And for me also, it's not a problem if you use it. And that's what I don't understand is one person saying, well, if I don't want to use this, it's a problem for me if you use it. Let everybody do what they do. It's up to them to figure it out.
You know, non-participation is the only solution that there ever is to any problem, no matter how insurmountable it seems. Mm-hmm. You can always take control of your own life. And that makes a statement on a level that is beyond the 3D.
Yeah, it really does. But people think that everything has to be done as a group. We're all trained like in a herd mentality. They want legislation that will make the waveforms safe. They want legislation that will allow them to continue to be addicts and users and not master their own minds. So I mean, I can't even get into how preposterous it is because you're asking the government to make your smartphone safe. What exactly are you doing? You're asking the government to make them make your smartphone safe. Do you see the legal nightmare that this would be to actually execute this desire into reality? Do you know how many years and years and lawyers and Congress people, and it will never happen.
Well, the legal fees alone will just, I mean, people are complaining about the national debt. I mean, do you want to double that? Seriously, folks.
No, I actually am kind of resistant to donating to charities when I know they're going to be using a lot of it for lawyers. Like I was donating to a charity that helps wild horses. And I just love it because they're a refuge. They've got tons of wild Mustangs just getting to live free. They were herded up by the BLM and put in prison, and then these guys released them. So I gave them a donation for hay. And they use so much of it for advocacy. I was getting a lot of emails about what they do to try to get lawsuits against the BLM and stuff. I was just like, I can't believe they're doing this. Just keep on rescuing them and feeding them. That's so much cheaper than the lawyers, and it's so beautiful.
I know. And you were asking me numerous times, like, is there any way I could tell them, put this money towards bales of hay, not to attorney fees?
I know.
Is there any way to just kind of distinguish that?
Yeah, so I don't like all that bureaucracy and stuff. I don't think that is the answer here. Obviously, if you don't like 5G and you're using it and you're waiting for the government to force telecommunications companies to make it safe so you can rot your brain and stay alive a little longer. The thing of it is even if it was not harmful, like my computer is hardwired to the internet, it's not really that harmful. It's still not good for your brain to just be looking at this stuff all the time. I think you should go outside more and do more things that will quiet the mind if you're concerned about deadly energy, because the only way to really fight it off is to strengthen your own energetic field. And a lot of that requires a quiet mind, quiet space, removing chaotic energy. And that's what the devices do, chaotic energy.
And do more things that involve social interactions with other living beings, not with a machine. But now that I think about it, also keep in mind that a lot of those people are going to be on the phones too. So you're going to potentially be dealing with the EMF induced drama that will come with those interactions. So I think it's just about being mindful.
Yeah. Well, we've talked so much about not using it. So I will address the energy tools too, because I think it's essential. And when I say that energy tool sellers have an obligation to disclose the dangers of EMF, it's not to say that energy tools are not wonderful, because I love energy tools. We make orgonite. I love the orgonite. I like the tensor rings. Those things are wonderful. I've used energy tools there are things you can make, like the obelix and the medicine wheel. It makes the environment around you so much better, because we actually need to increase OR too, not just remove DOR. So I am a proponent of energy tools. So Lloyd Burrell says, don't just reduce the DOR, or he called it EMF because he doesn't speak in
EMF is a type of DOR.
Right. So just remove that, and that's good enough. It is actually good enough to live healthy. But then you can increase your consciousness too on top of that and get even better by bringing in more OR.
But it's the way you use those devices. If you're using them to, if you've taken care of your home, your property, if you've removed devices, EMF emitting devices from your home, you can use the orgonite and have it be so much more effective when you're dealing with the external EMF, the stuff that you have no control over, the stuff that's just there and there's nothing you can do about. It's when you're using the devices in your home and you're also using the orgonite it's battling constantly. Think of it as a constant tug of war between the devices and the orgonite. It could just be so much more productive if you didn't have the EMF emitters in the first place.
Yeah, it's like filtering out a toxin, but it's still there in some amount that's still harmful. But we did it the other way around. We brought in the orgonite first. We didn't know how bad smartphones were. We didn't have really smartphones, but we had cell phones. We didn't know how bad they were. We didn't know how dangerous Wi-Fi was. But we had the orgonite first, and we felt the benefits. And that is very normal, and most people do feel the benefits right away. The people who feel ill effects, it's a serious detox, and that's usually the result of a very, very high amount of DOR that's being battled by the orgonite. We had a moderate amount in our house. So we had the Wi-Fi, the cell phone. Some people have security systems and things that do a lot more than that.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, the detox wasn't painful. We brought in the orgonite and it just felt great. But I didn't sleep through the night until I got rid of the Wi-Fi. That was a huge step. But I would say get rid of that stuff first, then get the orgonite. I did it the other way because I didn't know. I had to learn this.
But we learned it and we acted on it. When we first made orgonite, within 6 months of that first batch, the Wi-Fi was gone. Within 2 years of that first batch, the cell phones were gone. but it just took us time to learn these things. 'Cause you can't really learn this anywhere else, because unfortunately, no one's really talking about this, not in a constructive way anyway.
They're not. There's just this dishonesty regarding EMF, and we need to be honest with ourselves and with each other. We, as a whole, most of our culture has a serious addiction. It's a worldwide addiction. It's a very, very serious problem. So you have to be able to look at this realistically, and what are you doing in your life? And if you're a user, you have a problem. And it's an addiction like any other addiction. You have to conquer it, and the only way to do that is with a strong mind. It's not going to be easy. It's like conquering alcoholism, or I think it's even worse than that. I think it's even going to be harder than a physical drug.
Yeah, because it's more socially acceptable, right?
Well, that's part of it. That's a huge part of it. And we can't get away from it in social situations.
But it should be treated as any other addiction. I agree with you. And the most important part is that there's no shortcuts here. You can't just flip a switch and you're cured. It takes effort. And for a lot of people, it's going to take repeated attempts and failures, but you just got to dust yourself off and try again.
Do you remember when I did that 5D talk, and at the end, people were asking questions, and a lot of people were showing me their cell phone cases that were supposed to make it really good. It was good vibes.
Yeah, the camera was in the back, and there were like a dozen people holding up
their
phones.
Liked their, well, it wasn't really a dozen people, but...
Okay, but I'm sure a dozen people had them, and if they had the presence of mind, they would have lifted them.
Well, I mean, people who have this special protector, and this protector is supposed to reduce the EMF, and everybody was really swearing by it, and I still said you still shouldn't use it. I understand you need to use it sometimes, and it's good to have a protector for when you have to use it, but when you don't have to use it, it should be off.
You know what? That reminds me of something that might have happened maybe 60 years ago, like a bunch of people smoking Camels or Lucky Strikes, the non-filter cigarettes, and then someone comes along, hey, check this out. They got the first filter cigarette. This is healthy now. It's not too different than that, quite honestly.
That's true.
And I agree with what you said, Sharon. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is an addiction.
It's an addiction.
It has all the same qualities of one.
You're right. It has all the same qualities. So if you can see what it actually is, then you can overcome it. And we also have to be honest with each other about this. EMF is dangerous. And we talk about this all the time. We always tell people, don't use it, don't use it. We sell orgonite and we gift orgonite. We still tell people, don't use these devices that are harming you. And on our website, you can read an FAQ, which will explain more about orgonite and how it neutralizes the deadly energy and why it's still important to not hold an energy weapon every day, a weapon being used against you. It's very important to talk about this. So we let everybody know right off, the most important thing is abstinence. And I would like to see other people who make and sell energy tools providing the same disclosure. It's extremely important. It can't be overlooked.
I agree, but I don't think we're going to necessarily see this anytime soon, because unfortunately, a lot of the people that are selling these tools, they are DOR addicts just like all the other people too. So expecting some kind of discernment from them just because they're business people, that's kind of unrealistic in my opinion.
Well, and I hope that they just don't know.
I hope I'm wrong.
I hope they just don't know.
I'll say that. I hope I'm wrong.
It's not malicious or anything to not disclose it. A lot of people don't know how bad EMF is. But my feeling is if you know enough to neutralize it, you know enough to get rid of it, and encourage others to do the same.
The less EMF you have in your life, the easier it will actually be to overcome. It's you see, it feeds on itself. The more DOR you have, the worse you feel. But the less you have, the more successful you will be at overcoming this thing.
Well, I hope to have a cell phone rehab clinic someday. I would love to just have a nice quiet place somewhere by the coast, and people can just detox and enjoy the negative ions and just relax.
And pay for a team of lawyers to sue the telecommunications companies.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back more often now that the book is done and getting ready so that everybody can enjoy it and look at all the interesting skies and crafts. There are many, many color pictures I have to share and lots of stories from over the years. Thank you so much for listening. You can check out our work at thekembo.com. We will see you next time.